Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mang. Welcome back to the Manggcast. Second biggest disappointment of the week, right behind Ariel Winter announcing a breast reduction, which is like slapping God in the face. Well, actually, no. That's misogynistic and horrible of me. She had back issues. Leave her alone. Anyways, yeah, so Manggcast, that's what we're doing. Yes, that's what we're talking about. I'm sorry, I get distracted. So D23 is happening today. So we've got some movie stuff to talk about, but really not a whole lot related to D23. But first we have some video game stuff. Really light this week. It's been light for a while since E3. And it's gonna probably be light until we get to something bigger, like the Tokyo Game Show or something like that. You know, I don't even know when that is. That's not probably for a while, is it? I have no idea. I don't live in Tokyo. I don't go to the Tokyo Game Show. That's not what I'm about. But okay, so first of all, the Resident Evil 2 remake is officially happening. This might seem surprising to you for me to even mention because I'm not a big fan of the earlier Resident Evils. But I'd like to be, I guess. Like, it's one of those series that it's so, you know, it's a really big, popular series. They've been through plenty of games, and I loved Resident Evil 4. I thought that was great. 5 was alright, and then 6 was it's a very influential series. So I'd like to like it. So maybe one of these remakes will do it. I don't know much about Resident Evil 2. I've actually never played it, so I don't know. But you know, that's kind of the age that we're in right now. Plenty of remakes. Both in movies and video games, and pretty much everything. Remaking is a lot easier and a lot safer than any other bet. So, you know, anything from our childhood could get remade at any moment, which is perhaps a nicer thing in the video game world than it is in the movie world. In the movie world, a remake is new cast, new writers, new directors, new everything. It's just kind of a scary proposition. In the video game world, it's just kind of like, here's what you liked. We're doing the same thing. It's just better looking, usually. Which is nice. That's nice that we can do that. That was just really never a thing. Like, our hobby hasn't really been old enough to warrant remakes or anything like that. But now we are entering into that era where that is what we will receive, whether we want it or not. But really, I don't see a huge downside to remakes. I mean, yeah, it's kind of the same thing in the way of movies, where it's like, it's not really new original content. It's generally things we've already played. Companies put in less amount of work, I assume. I have to assume. And they get the same amount of money. Basically, sometimes, again, if you bought it 20 years ago or whatever. But, you know, maybe when they remake Final Fantasy VI, then maybe I'll be really happy. We'll see. Speaking of sequels, however, which is a step above remakes, Divinity Original Sin 2 has now been announced. And will be going up on Kickstarter on August 26th. So that is 11 days from now. Divinity Original Sin was a kickstarted game. It was kickstarted. Oh boy. Originally, the Kickstarter for the first game went up in, I have to find out. That was a long time ago. It was 2013. It was early 2013 is when the Kickstarter went up. I want to say March, maybe April. it's kind of hard to exactly find out when it went up. But early 2013, Kickstarter went up, and they ended up making $944,000 on the Kickstarter of their $400,000 goal. So over twice as much as they wanted. They slammed through a whole bunch of stretch goals, all that kind of stuff. Whole bunch of backers, 19,000 some backers. And it was a critical success, it was a commercial success, blah, blah, blah. All very good stuff. And so, of course, as anything happens in our current age, if it makes money, it's going to go on and make more money by either sequels, remakes, reboots, so on and so forth. And so now we have Divinity Original Sin 2, which is going to be another Kickstarter. They'll probably make even more money, because why not? Now they have... Oh, people are like, oh, you know, they delivered on the first game, they delivered well, and I want to get in on the ground floor. I want to get in, you know, stretch goals and backer, you know, benefits and blah, blah, blah. So, money, 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 money. I believe that they also had investors, which would make sense. They had private investors aside from Kickstarter. Which Kickstarter really, in a lot of ways, for a lot of projects, is almost like a barometer for popularity. Maybe there's a word for that. A popularometer. That's not a word. Where, you know, investors are willing to probably give money, but they'll be like, well, why don't you put it up on Kickstarter for this amount, and if you raise that, it shows that people are interested, and then this is a more solid investment. You know, they might do something like that. I can definitely see that happening, because if I were an investor, if I were somebody that had money that was looking to invest in a project like this, it just makes kind of sense. If I had a way to, you know, a metric that I could see if people were interested in this, other than just some poll floating around the internet, that people were willing to put forward their money before the game was even made, yeah, that sounds like a solid investment. So yeah, that's kind of what Kickstarter is for. Not for every project. I mean, a lot of the little guys actually do depend on the money from Kickstarter for start to finish for their project. There are no private investors, but you know, some things, like, especially, I don't think this happens in the video game world, but in like the board game world, for Kickstarter projects, they'll set the goal at like $100, and they know they'll, of course, make it, but they'll just do it as kind of like a pre-order thing, so they can just make the exact amount of copies that people want to buy, and it's just, yeah, we don't need your, like, they're kind of like perverting the original purpose of Kickstarter. It's kind of gross, but I guess it doesn't really harm anybody. It works, but Kickstarter is an interesting thing that we live with now. It kind of dominates a lot of media platforms. But for those people that are into these projects, you know, if you're into Divinity Original Sin, you're probably happy about this. You're probably going to go into the Kickstarter, back it, blah, 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 and it's going to get fun, and it's going to get made. I don't have too many doubts, so there you go. Alright, and then I guess last thing for video games. I know we're kind of burning through this, because there's a subject at the end of this podcast that I'm eager to talk about. I'm sure you can guess what it is. Dark Souls. Soulsborne. There are basically, I guess, 3 Soulsborne players, YouTubers or whatnot, that I care to pay attention to. The first is Epic Name Bro, of course, because he's like, I guess you would say a pillar of the community. I mean, that'd be the words I would use. Very influential over the years. Videos, ever since Demon Souls came out, he's one of the first Americans to put out videos. And he's worked on guides, he's done a lot of stuff. Love Epic Name Bro. The second is Lobos Jr., who is just very entertaining to watch. He does a lot of challenge runs, things like that. If there is a challenge run for, you know, Dark Souls, he's probably done it and streamed it and put it on YouTube. Very talented guy, entertaining to watch. The third guy is Bearsley. Bearsley I don't really watch as regularly as the other two, but Bearsley is the one that you really got like hear about on video game news sites because he does the crazy stuff. This is the guy, if you haven't heard, he's the one that beat Dark Souls with a Rock Band, drums, and a guitar. I think those are 2 separate runs. And he beat it with the Donkey Konga bongo set, which is just mind-blowing. But now, he beat the game. He beat Dark Souls 1, the whole game, just by voice control. So, his hands were not on any controller. He was just talking into a microphone, issuing commands. By basically using a program called Voice Attack, he was able to program it so that it would translate different voice commands, such as strafe left, strafe right, backwards, forwards, heavy attack, item, and then the game would actually carry through those commands. And there was actually a lag between when he would say it and when the action would happen. So he had to account for the lag. Yeah, it's as insane as it sounds. And I highly recommend checking it out if you have any interest in challenge runs or Dark Souls or anything like that. Incredibly impressive. But I mean, Bearsley has kind of done a bunch of stuff like that. But yeah, so if you go on his YouTube channel, he doesn't have the whole run because it took about 30 hours. But he has videos for the Gargoyle fight, Quelaag, Ornstein and Smo, and Gwyn. Ornstein and Smo is probably the one you want to check out because that's insane. And like I said, he's got videos for the drum controller, the guitar run, the bongos, and stuff like that. So, just kind of a mention of some of the things that people can do with games that are just very impressive. Alright, and so that wraps up games. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of articles. I mean, whenever I do a Manggcast every Saturday, I basically go through, like, well, I usually use Kotaku for all my research because they cover most things, and that's just what I use. And I'll just go through for the whole last week, and I'll look at every article and see if anything was worth talking about. Most of the time, it's just kind of, I mean, there's just a lot of minor stuff. What do I really need to say about it, you know? That's kind of the main deciding factors if I'm interested and if I have something noteworthy to say. I mean, most of the stuff is just like, oh, look at this shit from Rocket League. It's crazy. Look at it. So, yeah. Alright, so let's move on to movies. So first we're going to talk about Frank Grillo. Is Grillo? I have no idea. Frank Grillo. I'm going to go with Grillo because it's kind of funny. He was in a movie called Purge Anarchy as basically the main character. And he's been in some other stuff. He was in Captain America Winter Soldier. He was in The Gray. He's done some television stuff, including a drama series called Kingdom, things like that. Not a huge actor, but there you go. But what I'm talking about is Purge Anarchy. And it was announced then that he was going to be back for The Purge 3. If you don't know what The Purge series is about, I'm amazed you haven't seen any trailers or anything about it, but Purge is now a horror, thriller, suspense-esque series in which, in a parallel universe, one night of the year in America is what they call Purge Night, where, I mean, there are more specific rules, but basically all crime is legal for one night with no repercussions. There are some, like, you can't obviously just set off nukes or anything like that. But yeah, that's the plot. It's ridiculous, it's completely far-fetched, it'll never happen, and it's somewhat retarded, but that's the plot. And The Purge, the original movie, was about Ethan Hawke And it was basically a home invasion movie. He's kind of like protecting his family on Purge night as some people are trying to break in. More or less. And I liked The Purge, the original one, because Ethan Hawke was in it. And I'm a huge fan of Ethan Hawke. Love the Hawk. And I'm going to spoil it for you, because if you haven't seen The Purge, you probably don't care at this point. But Ethan Hawke's character dies at the end of The Purge. And I was really pissed off. Because I love Ethan Hawke, and I like the idea of the Purge series. I know it's ridiculous, but most horror movies' plots are ridiculous. So I wanted more sequels that kind of explored this whole concept, but I wanted Ethan Hawke involved, but he died. So when Purge Anarchy was announced, the sequel, and that they said they were going to kind of zoom out the action. Instead of just focusing on one house, they were going to focus on like the whole city and what things were going to be going on in the whole city. It was like, oh man, this could be like a whole anthology thing, and you get to look at all this different things going on throughout Purge night in the city, and oh man, that could be really cool. I did not really care for Purge Anarchy. In fact, I don't know if I'd ever watch it really again. If I'm going to watch a Purge film, it's going to be the first one. And I don't really want to review Purge Anarchy right now, but to basically sum up, it didn't really do kind of... What it should have done is sort of an anthology feel, where it kept on jumping around the city, and you got to see like all sorts of different aspects about, you know, the good and the bad and the horribleness, and not really even the good, but, you know. Instead, it basically just focused on one character, Frank Grillo, and his kind of quest for vengeance on Purge night. He wanted to kill somebody who killed his daughter or something on a previous Purge night, or his son, whatever. And he kind of helped some people along the way, but he didn't really care. It was just vengeance, and it was kind of like the Punisher if there was shit. So it was kind of like the Punisher Warzone, and it just wasn't very impressive at all. So now Purge 3 has been announced, and there was nobody really knows anything about Purge 3, but now it's announced that Frank Grillo will be returning, which is not really what I want to hear, because that seems like it's just going to focus on him again instead of doing more of what it should be doing, which is the anthology stuff and just kind of exploring the whole city, or even like the whole country, just like keep jumping around the country to different areas, because it's not just one city, like it's across the entire United States that this happens. So yeah, the inner city is insane, I bet, but what about the smaller stories that happen in just like villages, not villages, but the small towns and stuff like that. Like, you have a lot of room to just go crazy here, and Purge 2 is just, yeah. So we'll see. Purge 3 coming out in July 1st, 2016, so it's got some time. We'll hear about it more, I'm sure, but they've got something, potentially clever here, but they'll probably screw it up. Although it doesn't really matter, because Purge 1 cost like $4 million to make, the second one cost like $8 million to make, and they've made like over $200 million together, so it's kind of, yeah, it's gonna make money, but oh well. So continuing a relevance of Frank Grillo, the Raid Redemption, as it was called in the US, was a Indonesian martial arts action film. And if you have any interest in action movies or martial arts or anything like that, you've probably seen The Raid at this point, because it's incredible. I saw that in theaters. It was like limited release in theaters. I saw that. Blew my mind. Really did. I don't think it's quite as good as Dread, which I think also came out that year, but it's damn close, and they're very similar in plots. And so the Raid was distributed in America through Sony. They bought the rights to distribute in America, as well as the rights to an American remake that they were going to develop. And so that was announced in 2011, I think, and we still don't have it. In fact, they have nothing, basically. It's just been delayed and talked about and blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I don't know if anybody really cares. But originally, Frank Grillo was attached to star in the Raid remake, the American remake. And this is what he had to say about it. The Raid was a go movie, and there was one character, the critical character, that they were just not happy with. There's not a lot of 30-something guys out there that... There's a lot of training, a lot of martial arts training. They weren't going to remake The Raid, which is a beloved film, if they couldn't find a guy who could find the physical stuff, and they hadn't been able to do that. So I think we're going to come back around after I'm done with the second 10 episodes of Kingdom. We're going to come back around to that. So in the original Raid, the main character was played by an Indonesian guy, and I'm gonna not pronounce his name correctly, but I apologize. Iko Uwais, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. And this guy, if you've seen the movie, I mean, it's the martial arts in that film is absolutely incredible. Like, not just from him, but from basically the whole cast. It's just really incredible martial arts. It's Silat, the Indonesian martial arts that like their special forces use and shit like that. It's really impressive looking. And yeah, so when The Raid came out, when I saw it, it was just one of those action movies, just like, you know, we've never really seen anything like this. When Ong Bak came out with Tony Jaa, it was one of those things like we've never seen anything like this. Because, you know, I was used to Jackie Chan, Jet Li, things like that, where it's like, man, they're really incredible. I wish I could be like that. But they both basically just did wushu. I mean, it was cool. They did some cool, great movies. But there was no real brutality ever to anything that they did. Whereas when Ong Bak came out, you know, Tony Jaa just went ape shit with Muay Thai on all these guys. It was just like, good God, look at this guy, this athlete that was doing all his own stunts, and he was just this, you know, he was just this guy from Thailand or whatever. It was incredible, and the same pretty much thing when The Raid came out. I don't feel like America has anything like that. Not to say that we don't have incredible athletes, we don't have an incredible martial artists, but I don't know if we really have anybody that would be on that level. I'd love to be proven wrong. I really would. And it's one of those things where I just don't really know, I guess. But here's the difference. Like Tony Jaa and the main star of The Raid, they weren't really known. Like, they weren't really actors at all. They were martial artists. And I think that's the difference. When Hollywood wants to set out and they want to make a big budget action movie, they don't go for, you know, athletes or martial artists most of the time. They go for actors. They go for Stallone. Stallone is ripped, you know, not anymore, but I mean, he's still ripped, but I'm saying he's not really relevant anymore. But back in the day, like, Stallone wasn't, I guess it's different because it's not really martial arts. But it was just like, I guess it was way back in the day, like they put Arnold in movies. Arnold wasn't really an actor. He was a bodybuilder. He had won like Mr. Olympian or whatever multiple times. He had an incredible physique, and they're like, oh, we'll just put him in movies. We'll see what happens. They don't really do that anymore. They prefer safer bets. They want better actors, because we've had movies with just athletes, with wrestlers, with things like that. That's how we got John Cena in movies. That's how we got Kurt Angle in movies. Like, it's just, no, you'd rather have a good actor that's known for acting than just an incredible martial artist or athlete or things like that. I mean, The Rock, of course, is the exception, but the exception that proves the rule. So I just don't see an American remake of Raid casting an American martial artist just because he's a great martial artist. They're going to go with somebody that's just a good actor, that's in really good shape, and they'll just try to make it look like he's a good martial artist. I think that's the big difference. And that's why I don't think anything will ever really compete with something like Ong Bak or The Raid Redemption or things like that. I mean, we have stuff like Dread, which is incredible. And I like Dredd more than I like The Raid, although, again, it's a slim margin, but still. Like, for Americans, for Hollywood, like, just gun explosion action movies, that's what we do best. That's what we do better than anybody else. But I guess if we want to remake a martial arts movie, it's going to be tricky. Bottom line, though, just watch The Raid Redemption, because it's incredible. The sequel, a little less so, but still pretty good. Speaking of action stars that nobody really cares about, Dolph Lundgren. If you've already read this, you already know what I'm talking about when I say, how often do you mention Dolph Lundgren? Dolph Lundgren was spotted on the set of Kindergarten Cop 2. So the picture spotted was basically him in a classroom set in a full suit and basically a bunch of kids sitting there, just kind of watching him. And it's from the set of Kindergarten Cop 2. I mean, there's so many things to say about this. And this is basically, I guess you could count this as my ridiculous news of the week. Kindergarten Cop 1 is ridiculous. Like, it's a ridiculous concept. If you've never seen the movie, I don't know if I could really highly recommend it. I mean, if you're a big Arnold fan, you've probably already seen it. I don't know if it really holds up nowadays if you're seeing it fresh. Basically, the plot of Kindergarten Cop, which came out in 1990, is Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a cop. Or, I guess he's a detective in L.A. John Kimball. And he's basically after this drug dealer. And so with his partner, they go undercover in Oregon to find this drug dealer's ex-wife, because they think that she may be able to lead them to where he's like hiding, or things like that, or testify something. I think it's something like that, testifying, something like that. They want to get to his ex-wife, and so as part of the cover, John Kimball's partner is supposed to act as a substitute teacher for the drug dealer's son's kindergarten class. But his partner gets, like, the stomach flu. So, in a hilarious twist, Mr. Olympian himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, has to take over a kindergarten class and teach them. And he, of course, has no interest in doing this. And he's real grumpy. He's so grumpy. And he's big and mean. But he is softened by the warm hearts of children. And he eventually becomes basically the greatest teacher to ever exist. And then in the later half of the movie, it kind of loses its appeal, because it just gets to kind of a bit more, not even an action movie. It's just kind of a... No. When people reference Kindergarten Cop, they reference the first half of the movie. They're not really talking about the second, or even, I guess, the last quarter of the movie. Because what you really care about is Arnold Schwarzenegger with the kids in the class and just being hilarious. And so, yeah, the movie spawned a lot of memorable lines and scenes and things like that, because it's Arnold with kids, and it was really kind of an odd turn for him in 1990. I mean, up to that point, if I can look up his filmography real quick. I doubt I can, but I guess, he was in Hercules in New York, which... Actually, did I ever upload the Mangs movie of Hercules in New York? I actually have no idea. I made one. Hercules in New York, of course, is incredible. And then he was in Conan the Barbarian in '82, which was huge, and he was Conan for he was just Conan, And then he was in Terminator. You know, Terminator was good. He was real scary in Terminator. And he was in Commando, which is basically the second greatest action movie of all time, and definitely the greatest Arnold action movie of all time. The Running Man, Predator, Red Heat. He was in Twins, which I guess would be his first comedy, if you don't count Hercules in New York. But really, you should count Hercules in New York, because it's hilarious. So I guess he was in Twins. And then he was in Total Recall, which was the opposite of Twins. So Kindergarten Cop, I guess, was his second comedy. But he wasn't really known for it, because he was, again, Commando, Running Man, Predator, Terminator, Conan. He was the action guy. So, yeah, Kindergarten Cop was pretty strange, and that's why it was so funny, and that's why it worked. That's why we all know about it. It grossed $202 million. Quite a bit of dosh. Which brings us to this sad point in history, in which Dolph Lundgren wants to be in Kindergarten Cop 2. Now, I was going to say I understand something, but I don't really understand anything of this. Dolph Lundgren is basically the really shitty version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're both foreign. They're both big, muscular guys. They both dislike Stallone. They're both basically from the same generation of action movies, where you were big, you were muscled, and you just did awesome, amazing shit. And, of course, Lundgren is most famous for being Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. That's pretty much what most people know. When you say, when you say, oh, Dolph Lundgren, who? And you're like, Ivan Drago, Rocky IV. Like, oh, that guy. He's still alive? Something like that. And so he went on to do not much. He was the Punisher. Some people don't know that. Dolph Lundgren was the Punisher in 1989. I've never seen the movie, and I don't think most people have seen the movie, but yeah, he was. And he basically did a bunch of kind of made-for-TV, not much anything of anything. He was in Universal Soldier, And of course now, most recently, he was in the Expendable movies. So you can see he shares similarities with Arnold, but he's like the cheap knockoff version. Which I guess makes sense then that he would star in Kindergarten Cop 2, which is going to be the cheap knockoff of Kindergarten Cop 1. This should appeal to nobody, to be honest. I don't know, this can't hit theaters. Okay. I don't doubt that Dolph Lundgren could have some comedic moments in the film. In Expendables 2, he did have some comedic stuff, and I remember laughing at a little bit of it. But a whole movie starring Dolph Lundgren in 2016? Yeah, it's just a bad idea. Just a bad idea. But it's being written by the guy that wrote Big Fat Liar 2 and directed by the guy that did Jarhead 2 Field of Fire. Holy shit, these guys got some sequels in their belts and they're ready to go. I didn't even know Jarhead 2 was a thing, and maybe you didn't either. It starred Cole Hauser, apparently. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move on to our prime subject for today's Manggcast. And that, of course, is Fantastic Four. Everybody's talking about it. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of shit talking, of course, from pretty much everybody. But also, there's a lot of finger pointing from people involved with the film. The writers finger pointing, the directors finger pointing, the studio. The cast, I don't think, has really said much at all. And that doesn't really matter. That's not what I'm going to talk about. I don't care whose fault it is, because I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be honest with you. I've reviewed some movies, and I've reviewed plenty of really bottom of the barrel terrible movies, and some really good movies. And Fantastic Four is not a Mangs movie. I can't call it that. It's not. But it's uncomfortably close. And really, it's just... It kind of drowns in its own mediocrity, I guess. There's a lot of ways that I could approach this review. I'm pretty much going to be spoiling the whole thing, so I feel like most people don't really care. If you really cared about Fantastic Four, you've probably already seen it, because, you know. Alright, so... During the movie, at a couple spots, I guess, they reference 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, and I feel like that's really kind of the concept that they were going for, as far as the spirit of their film. In the sense that they wanted this to be almost like a sci-fi epic about the inherent dangers of exploration and observation, and how nothing can really be observed without changing it, and but we still need to embrace our spirit of discovery, and, you know, things like that, like heavy topics and stuff like that. They wanted to kind of be similar to something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And Reed Richards during the movie, you know, he admires Captain Nemo for going farther than anybody else had ever gone before. And I really think that's what they were trying to, you know, cover. But they... And, well, there is room in our lives for a Fantastic Four movie like that. That is a sci-fi epic film about, you know, science and exploration and discovery and all that kind of stuff. And the inherent dangers, but also the, you know, the necessity of it. But this is not it. Because I feel like, you know, that's all well and good, and it's definitely possible to do a movie like that, but at the end of the day, you have a movie about a big rock monster and a guy that stretches. No matter what, you're not going to be making Interstellar when you also have to include stuff like that. Like, you can't. Like, Interstellar, incredible movie about basically all those topics I just mentioned. Like, it really, like, that's kind of what they want to do. But you have a guy that stretches his body and a girl that goes invisible. So to really look at that from a completely 100% serious, not even realistic. It doesn't have to be realistic, but it has to be, you either have to look at it from a serious, like, you know, you're not giggling behind your hands and like, look at this, isn't this crazy? Like, you actually have to, like, embrace how it almost has to border on, like, body horror at that point. Or you have to treat it like a comic book. Now, I'm not saying that comic books don't have great storylines and, can really be, deep and emotional and psychological, philosophical, they definitely can be all those things. But again, this is not it. And also you have to kind of look at it from your target audience. People are going into this generally with some knowledge of Fantastic Four, even if it's the basis knowledge of it's a guy that stretches, it's an invisible girl, there's a guy that goes on fire and flies, and there's a big rock dude. That's what most people know at the bare minimum of going into Fantastic Four. Not everybody, trust me, but most people. And they're expecting comic book action, and this is on the level of not just stuff like the Avengers or, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, but also on the different level of stuff like Batman and Man of Steel and, the DC world as well, which is definitely trying to be more dark and gritty, which is what Fantastic Four wanted to be, but it's still kind of embraced the action. Man of Steel was dark and gritty and a bit more emotional and things like that, but it had a whole bunch of crazy action in it. Fantastic Four does not have a bunch of crazy action. It has pretty much one action scene. And again, I'm not really saying, like, man, if we just cater to audiences' expectations, how are we ever gonna, expand our medium and, make incredible new films that people don't even know they want? Yeah, but it's Fantastic Four. And again, this isn't it. Like I said, there's room in our lives for a Fantastic Four movie that does that is on the level of Interstellar. I don't know what it would be like. None of us know what it would be like, but we would accept it if it was done right. This is not it. So what is it? What is it like? There was an article on IO9. You can look it up. It's called The Most Important Scenes from Fantastic Four as I Remember Them. You can look up this article. I highly recommend you do if you saw the movie or if you have no interest in seeing the movie. If you really don't want to be spoiled, you probably already shut off the podcast. But either way, look up this article. Most Important Scenes from Fantastic Four as I Remember Them. Because this article basically puts a very snarky, hilarious look at the plot of Fantastic Four and various scenes from the movie. They are all completely spot on. To the point where, like, last night, we were at a bar, and we were all talking about the movie, Fantastic Four. We were all just joking on it, ripping on it. One of my friends had not seen the movie, but he had read this article. And he was, like, in our conversations, ripping on it, just as if he had seen the movie. Like, the article's that good. So if you read that article, I'm not just gonna, like, read you lines from the article and be like, this is true, haha. So I'll just kind of sum up. So yeah, the movie is bad. I mean, I guess you could say because of poor writing. And even evident from the trailers, there's a lot of lines in the movie of dialogue that are just cringeworthy and just like, you actually wrote that on paper and somebody performed that. I mean, definitely one of the lines from the trailers was like, he's stronger than any of us, but he's not stronger than all of us. Like, that's just a bad line. I mean, maybe in your head, it's kind of like, oh man, that's kind of badass. Like, we should work together because, working together is like cool and it's useful. Nobody's ever thought of that shit. But when you write it down, but later when actually somebody speaks it, it's like, what was I thinking? We'll just keep it in. It'll be fine. Oh yeah, put it in the trailer. So yeah, the writing's bad, but it goes beyond that because apparently, I don't want to get into the finger pointing, but apparently the studio, and it's so easy to just blame the big bad studio. It's like, well, my writing and my directing, we had our jobs covered. It was great. You should see what we had. But the studio came in and they were like, we'll just scrub this out and, get rid of that and add this part. And it's just like, it's all their fault. It's so easy to finger point. But it doesn't really matter. The movie is about, I guess an hour 45, something like that. I think it's about an hour and 45 minutes long. Which, my friends all said it was, oh, thank God it was so short. Which, it's not really, well, I mean, that's not at all what you want to say when you walk out of a movie theater. But I guess I would say I'm sad that it's so short, with the caveat of, I wish it were better and longer. You know, I wish there was more to this, but it was actually well done. Which I guess is just a general statement of I'm sad that it's bad. So the movie is an hour and 45 or so, and throughout the movie, I think probably the weakest part was character development. Weakest part. Now, I'll get to the weakest part. One of the weakest part was character development. You have Reed Richards, okay? He's the main character, pretty much. Mr. Fantastic himself. And right from the very beginning of the movie, you get the very bluntly, over-the-head, obvious impression that this kid is just, he's genius level. Like, nobody understands him. He's just so smart, and he's so above his level. And his teacher is just like, oh, shut up, Reed, sit back down. Nobody knows what you're talking about. You're so stupid, and get out of here. And it's just like, okay. We never see Reed's parents, so we don't know how they are. There's just a passing line from him as a kid where it's just like, they don't understand any of this stuff. And it's like, okay, I guess they don't really, care to encourage you at all, but all right. Because he's basically just building like a molecular teleporter in his garage. Oh no, I think we do see a shot of his parents. It's like his stepdad or something like that. That's just like watching football. He's just, oh, god damn it. Something. It's just ridiculous. That's the last we ever see of him. And so it shows them as a kid, well, basically him as a kid, and then they jump to like when they're 18 or 19 or something like that. And again, I'm not going to reiterate from the article. You can really just read the article, trust me, it's good. It says everything I need to say. But, so you have Reed Richards, and you follow him kind of throughout the movie as the main character, more or less. There's a bit of the movie where he just disappears, and you don't get to see him for a while. But he's the main character, and you get he's intelligent, he's very intelligent, and that's kind of it. Like, I don't really know much else I could say about his character just based on what the movie portrayed. Like, you get that he's smart, and you get that he's kind of nerdy and a bit dorky and awkward, but that's basically where it ends. Sue Storm, you get the impression that she's just kind of a cold bitch. That's pretty much the impression you get from the start, more or less to the end. And that's kind of all that you get out of her. And then you have Johnny Storm, played by Michael B. Jordan. And in the article, it says that his character development is, I like cars. And that's pretty much what you get out of Johnny Storm. And there was a separate article I read where it said that he wasn't really... Like, Johnny Storm is one of those characters where he's just kind of snarky, I guess. He's generally the upbeat one that cracks the most jokes and things like that. And in this movie, he was less snarky and more just kind of angry. Not completely, but that's the general impression that you got, is he didn't want to be here. He didn't make a whole lot of jokes. And he just kind of either like shrugged people off or yelled at them a little bit. That's Johnny Storm. And so yeah, he's basically just doing this because he wants his car back because his dad took it from him. That's pretty much it. But after he gets his powers, it's kind of just like, I'm doing something with my life, so okay. And then that's it. That's the character development you get. He's okay with him doing something. And then the worst, from my perspective, is Ben Grimm. The Thing. You get the impression, as a kid, that he was kind of, not a well, I guess abused, but more from like his brother and maybe his dad. I don't know. I read that somewhere, but I don't remember seeing that in the movie. So he's kind of beaten up a little bit as a kid, and he works in like a junkyard, and he's not really that bright, but he like meets Reed Richards, who is bright, and they just start working together, so they're partners. And so then we jump to them as 18, 19, and he doesn't really say much at all, and he just kind of is Reed Richards' partner, though he doesn't know anything. And then Reed Richards goes off to this secret facility to build this teleporter, and Ben just kind of stays behind. You don't get to really find out anything more. And then Reed Richards is like, oh, Ben, you got to come check this thing out. We finished the teleporter. You got to come with us. We're drunk. And so Ben just like, all right, I'll show up. And he doesn't really say much. And they, of course, they go through the teleporter. They get their powers, and he becomes the thing. And he just gets really pissed off, and he's like, because Reed basically abandons them all for some reason that I have no idea why. But he just leaves, and so Ben just like hates him. And that's basically how it is until the end of the movie, when finally they decide to work together against Dr. Doom. And that's pretty much all we get out of Ben Grimm. Is he's beat as a kid, and he doesn't say much, and he doesn't like Reed, but then he likes Reed. And that's it. But I guess the grand worst character horribleness ever is to Dr. Doom. Let me just sum it up in a way that you'll probably understand if you've seen some comic book movies. What they've done to Dr. Doom in this film is more or less on the same level as what they did to Deadpool in X-Men Origins Wolverine. For those of you that know what I'm talking about, you understand the impact of what I just said. If you don't understand, because you didn't see that movie, you don't know what, whatever. Jeez, I don't know how to sum it up in a better way than that. I honestly don't. Like, that is the perfect way to sum it up. So I guess I'll just go into a bit more detail. So Dr. Doom in the comics, Victor Von Doom, is a genius. Like, one of the, probably, definitely one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe. Perhaps the smartest, depending on who you ask. And he's been, I mean, of course he's like the Fantastic Four's arch nemesis, but he has branched out to so much more than that. And I mean, in like the current run of whatever Marvel comic, the arc that they're going through, he's basically like the god of the Marvel universe. And so he's more or less like the best villain that Marvel possesses. Like, DC Comics has, like, it's got Lex Luthor, and it's got the Joker, it's got things like that. There's, like, very memorable stuff. Marvel has Dr. Doom. I mean, if I was going to make a list of villains, Dr. Doom would probably be at the top. So, yeah, I mean, and... yeah, so really, really solid villain, maybe even not a villain, depending on what you're reading and doing. And so, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into the kind of, like, basics of his character and the history, things like that. But keep in mind, very good villain. Not so good of a villain in this movie. What happens is, Victor Von Doom is just like another teenager, another guy their age, that works on this teleporter with them. And he's just a guy from Latveria, I guess. And he seems like kind of a prick. But he's portrayed as a genius. Although I guess he's portrayed as like slightly less intelligent than Reed Richards, which is utter bullshit, but okay. So he's kind of a prick, but okay, he's just a normal guy, and you see him kind of laugh and joke with them, and he's just okay. He's Victor Von Doom. He's got an unfortunate last name, but what are you going to do? They go to the other planet, or other dimension, which they don't call the negative zone. They call it Planet Zero. And I guess they call it Planet Zero because they believe it to be, like, a planet where they could discover, like, the source of all life or something. Yeah, I don't know, something like that. So the four of them, and by the four of them I mean Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, Johnny Storm, and Victor Von Doom. Yes, I'm not kidding. The four of them go to Planet Zero just on their own while they're pretty much drunk, except for Ben. And they go there without anybody's permission because they want to be the first ones there. They want to be known as the first ones there. So they go there without any supervision, anybody knowing they're there. Not even Sue Storm knows they're there. Until, I mean, she finds out while they're there, but they leave without her. She doesn't get to go. Which is ridiculous, but yeah. I mean, the article I mentioned talks about this, and it's funny. They go there, and they find basically like this green goop. Like a whole bunch of it. And apparently, I guess originally it was like orange. It was like yellowish orange, but they were worried that people would think it was lava. So this is what they think of you. They think that you'll think it's lava. So they're like, oh no, we can't let them think that, so change it to green. Green's always weird, right? Like, oh yeah, sure. So it's a bunch of green goop. So Victor Von Doom, in the movie, one of the smartest people ever around. In the comics, the smartest person ever around. A genius, Victor Von Doom, goes to another dimension, or another planet, or whatever. An completely unknown environment. Finds a pool of green goop that is like bubbling and crackling with basically electricity. And he sticks his hand in it. I swear to God, that's exactly what he does. This is a scientist. And, I mean, I have to read an article. I have to read some lines from this article just so you can understand. Even if you haven't read it, I'll just read this for you. So Doom, in the article, like, it just presents, like, jokey conversation, dialogue from the characters. So it says, Doom, I'm gonna touch it. And Ben Grimm's like, what? You're on an alien planet in a new goddamn dimension. Why would you possibly touch anything? And Doom responds, no, dude, it's cool. I saw a scientist do it on Prometheus. And that is so spot on perfect, because that's exactly what was so damn funny in Prometheus. Was you have these scientists in this alien world that just like see this weird little thing coming out of like this little pool of water or whatever, and he's just like, oh, it's cool, I'll just pet it or whatever. And yeah, shit goes down. And so basically, Doom sticks his hand in this pile of goop, and everything, shit hits the fan, and the planet starts like blowing up or something like that. And so Doom basically gets caught in like an explosion of goop, and he basically falls into a whole pool of it, and he gets left behind. And the others get back in the thing, and they finally get teleported back just as like all this radiation was hitting them, and this is what turned them into their respective powers, as well as Sue Storm, who was near the teleporter back on Earth. She got hit with a bunch of radiation and she went invisible. And so it's really weird, like, how they get their powers. It doesn't make any sense. Not that it really is meant to make any sense, but it's like you get Ben Grimm, I guess, because basically he's being like pelted with a whole bunch of rocks while the radiation is hitting him. It's like, okay, I get they like bonded with him. But then Reed, like, nothing is happening to him while he's getting hit with the radiation. Like, nothing happens. He's just, like, in his seat or whatever. But then afterwards, as everything is calmed down, he's just sitting there. He, like, starts to, like, move. He, like, starts to crawl away. but his leg was trapped and he didn't like realize it or something, even though he did realize it. And you see that his leg is like completely stretching out to like no detriment. It's like, oh, he's stretchy. So I don't know like how that made any, like why did he get that power? It doesn't make any sense. And then Sue Storm, she just got hit by radiation, so she can go invisible and make force fields. And then Johnny Storm, he caught on fire. Something caught on fire while he was getting hit with the radiation, so that makes sense. We're running a bit long now because I've been talking about this a while, so I'll finish up. Read the article. But finally, that's Doctor Doom. So Doctor Doom gets covered in all the goop, and he's pretty much presumed dead, but you know he's not dead. But I didn't know they were going to go this route. They finally rebuild the whole teleporter like a year later. And they go back there, and they find Doctor Doom. And basically, what happened to Doctor Doom was his suit, like his environmental suit, fused with his body and his face. And so if you've looked up any images from Fantastic Four or anything, you can see him in his outfit. And he basically looks like a robot. He looks like a robot. He looks like a robot. He's not wearing a mask. Anything you see, he's not wearing a mask. That's not a mask. That's his face. Because his suit melded with it. Scientifically. And so he gets taken back to Earth. And he basically goes insane for some reason. The plot really doesn't make any sense. And his powers include being able to basically just make people's brains explode. Like, you remember, maybe you don't remember, but in the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson, like it's in the trailers even, you saw her like just like drop a whole room full of guys just with like a click of her finger, you know, just like by thinking it. That's basically what Doctor Doom can do. He's like God, pretty much, which is cool, but no, because this is not Doctor Doom. This is a joke. This is an abomination of Doctor Doom. So he just starts like melting people's brains. And then he sets off like some sort of reaction. He goes back to the planet Zero, and he sets off like a black hole. So the Fantastic Four have to go through back to the other dimension, to planet Zero, to stop him and shut down this whole black hole before it destroys Earth. And so they get there and they start fighting him. And guess what? He doesn't melt their brains instantly, even though we clearly know he has that ability because he demonstrated about 10 minutes earlier. Characters can have plot armor in any source of fiction, but it needs to make sense. There needs to be a logical reason that a villain or something doesn't just, you know, destroy them. Like, there needs to be, like, you can't, like, be, like, second-guessing it or something like that. This is so blatant. You just showed us he has the ability to melt their brains. There's no reason that he would not melt their brains. He has no reason to like them or keep them alive. They're trying to stop his plans and they're trying to kill him. He would melt their brains, and they have no protections against the brain melting. Maybe the Thing, okay, fine, but like Reed Richards, he's got a big brain to melt. You don't like Reed because there was like a little thing where he has a thing for Sue Storm, and Reed was chatting up Sue Storm and he didn't like it. So you want to melt this guy's brain, just melt his brain. But no, he's part of the Fantastic Four. He's got to stay alive. So Doctor Doom is basically just turns into just a dumb shit, and he gets wrecked real quick. The fight takes like 5 minutes, and it's worse. It's a worse final climactic fight than like Iron Man 2, which for a while set like the standard for kind of shitty end movie fights for me. But nope, Fantastic Four is here. So again, the article, I keep mentioning it, but really it's so perfect. It's better than the movie. The article is better than the movie. It's really well written. But the problem is, it's too boring. Nothing really happens. It needs more action. I know I'm just it's like pandering, I know, but come on. Doctor Doom was a miserable failure. It needed more character development. Yeah. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't terrible, but it was just kind of mediocre. And that's not great. Fantastic Four it needs better. I feel bad for people that are like Fantastic Four fanatics, because they deserve better than this, you know? They deserve a good movie about their characters. Anybody that loves any sort of comic book character kind of deserves a good movie or something about them, but this is multiple times that Fantastic Four just does not happen. Apparently, though, I'll end on a little piece of news. Apparently, 20th Century Fox is still moving ahead with Fantastic Four 2. Originally, before this movie even came out or anything like that, they had announced a release date for Fantastic Four 2 of June 9th, 2017. After I saw the movie and I heard the reviews and the box office performance, I was like, there's no way there's a Fantastic Four 2. They're going to sell the rights back to Marvel for a tidy sum and just wash their hands of it. That's like 100% that's what I thought. But this now, they're going to go ahead with a sequel. I mean, obviously they're making a different director, different writer, different everything, but man, why would the actors want to even be involved? I guess if they get paid, who cares? But how much money are you going to put into Fantastic Four 2? That it would have so much negative vibes going into it. I mean, Fantastic Four from 2005. The one with Chris Evans and some other people that I don't remember. That movie performed pretty well. I mean, most people shit all over it, but it was a budget of about $100 million. It made like $330 million, which is why it got a sequel. That was the only reason. The sequel actually performed all right as well. $130 million budget, $289 million, but they didn't go ahead with another movie until now. So far, this cost $120 million and has made 75. I just can't believe they're going to make a sequel. That's so ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the worst movie I've seen in theaters this year. Although it's tough for me to remember everything I've seen in theater. It kind of all blends together, I guess. But it's definitely at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, again, I just feel bad. I just feel bad for people that really love Fantastic Four, because, you know, when the Flash movie comes out, if it's on the level of this, oh man, I'm gonna be wrecked. But on the really plus side, we have the Flash TV show, which is incredible. Fantastic Four people, they're just like, well, we have these really good comics, I guess. You know, it's just, yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? So I guess if I'm gonna watch a Fantastic Four movie, it's probably gonna be the one from 2005, but only because it's got Chris Evans in it. So I was really hopeful, because I was like, Michael B. Jordan, he's the up and comer, he's the Michael Jordan of acting. It's gonna be great, but not even he really saves this movie. So it's sad. Alright, so that wraps up all of that. Most of this episode was, of course, devoted to Fantastic Four, but it's a subject to talk about. Not everything comic book is going to be stellar, and in fact, movies like this are what is probably going to lead to comic book movies falling out of fashion. 2007, 2006, things like that. 2008, comic book movies were, I mean, everybody. It was make comic book movies. It's going to be big. In the years after that, make more comic book movies. Now, I mean, with stuff like Green Lantern, with stuff like Fantastic Four, with the Thor movies. I like to hate on those. Even movies that maybe, 6 years ago or something like that would have done much better are falling out of favor a little bit. So I can definitely see the bubble bursting, which is sad for DC because they're just getting into the game. But perhaps with their kind of change of tone, maybe they can do better. But they're basically going for the same tone as this Fantastic Four movie. I just hope that they do it a lot better. But I guess I have faith, so we'll see. Alright, so my name is Mang. This has been the Manggcast for August 15, 2015. And I'll see you fine folks next week.